Hello. Good afternoon once again. I'll make my work very simple because I realize that we don't have much time. So I'll try to change the presentation style and then skip some slides. I'm a research scientist and been working with the wood industry and particularly this time with the carving industry. And I want to share with you some of the concerns these traditional wood carvers are having with our challenge. As you've heard from a number of presentations, a lot of the species are endangered. And these species have, with time, become the preferred species for carving. My brother from Tanzania has shared. We also heard from Kenya. So I don't need to spend too much time on it. However, I'd like us to, for the benefit of those who don't know about my country, if you look on the African map, you will try and find Ghana here, the red. Very small country, about 25 million population. It's covered with tropical rainforests, mostly in the green areas. And the past 2 decades, you could have very dense, rich tropical forests. However, now, with the depletion and overexploitation, we are losing lots of our forests. So I quickly jump to wood carving and the issue with the concerns trying to shift from using the traditional species and then going to use plantation or the lesser known ones because these popular species are endangered. Of course, it was mentioned that this carving industry in Africa plays a major role. It's a major source of livelihood for many Ghanaians. If you look around this picture, there's a particular town or communities in Ghana. As you walk around the main street, you find just these structures. Along the whole street of about 20 kilometers, everyone is carving. That is their livelihood. You have these structures and they're selling along the routes. You find groups like this sitting down and carving from morning to evening. It means it's very important. The carvings are diverse, and then each carver and association has its own specialization. And so for the past a couple of years, the carvers we brought to IWCS, they come with different styles. One was well known for unity carving. The current one is well known for carving traditional tools. The preferred species for carving are gradually dwindling. That's no news now. And of course, we need to shift our attention to the plantation ones and then the lesser known species. However, these carvers have concerns. And so this work was to try to find out the species they are using and then try to also find out the alternative ones we can use to replace them. And then also try to list the concerns they have so that we can all appreciate and see how we discuss and then solve these challenges. We don't need this methodology. Work was done in Ghana. I know Peter Bass will know how Ton and locally Jakari. And they did start rating of some of our tropical species. A black star would mean globally it is rare or priority has to be taken, high priority has to be taken in managing these species. A gold star means globally it's restricted. You cannot cut from our forest. And then if it's a blue star, then there's some rarity in Ghana. When it's scarlet, then it's highly threatened in Ghana, at least by overexploitation. And then when it's a red star in Ghana, then it's heavily exploited. A pink star means it's got some commercial interest. Now, I have here a list of the indigenous species the traditional carvers use. And the Diospyros has been mentioned, for us known as the ebony. And from our star rating, the work done as of 2006, it was scarlet, which means, but if you look at the percentage of carvers who are using this Diospyros species, then you could see over 83% of respondents are still using it, even though it's scarlet red. Mahogany, African mahogany, the Kaya species, also scarlet star. Scarlet means it's threatened, endangered, it cannot be used. But high percentage of people were still using this scarlet star Kaya species. Mansonia, Milicia, also scarlet red. And then the red star too means that it's, as you can see, red star is heavily overexploited. So when it's scarlet and red star, then you can't touch it now. Meanwhile, a good number, high percentage of the carvers are still using these species at the moment. It goes all the way down to Sese, Funtum, Sidari. Right. Now, these are the plantation species, and then the lesser known species that are being used to replace the traditional species. The Cedrela odorata, of course, is exotic to our country, but Ghana has got lots of plantations in Cedrela because it's fast growing, and you can cut it within a few years. Tectona grandis teak also covers a lot of vegetation nowadays. If you consider the plantations going on in Ghana, almost every farmer would like to plant teak. So teak, we have a lot in Ghana. So carvers started carving with teak. This Astonia, local name Namibia, is a green star. Green star means currently available in Ghana. It is not threatened. And then also this Teculia, is also a green star. And therefore, these species can easily be used to replace these endangered ones listed above. As mentioned, over 80% of these carvers are using Diospyros, even though it's overexploited and endangered. And of course, the Kaya also over 60%. Candlelight is also threatened. However, some of them are using. You have here a range of wood carvings from a shop where a variety of species from the Diospyros through the mahogany, and then local preferred species like Funtum. Here, traditional drums, these ones, particular tribe in Ghana, they will not use any species apart from this Picanthus species for these drums. Meanwhile, it's also becoming endangered. So what would they do? Of course, mahogany is also used for some works. And depending on the customers, they try to prescribe what they want, and they specify the species, and they carve, according to the carvers, they have no choice, they have to use them. For the plantation species, about 73% of these carvers are using the teak, and according to them, they prefer the teak to even any other plantation species in carving because of the grain design on them and easily getting accepted in the market. Cedrela has also gone in the market, and a lot of the carvers are already using it in Kumasi, a carving village where most of our commercial carvers are located. This is a figure of a carving made of teak and figures made from cedrela. You can see local carvers busily preparing some indigenous plantation-grown species for carving. Now here, I want you to have a look at this comparison where this is a traditional carving, a stool, which is made with the preferred indigenous species, and an alternative plantation species in Namibia. You see it's light in color compared to this one. Usually we carve with the mahogany or picanthus. And then this one, they'll use light wood, white color in place of it and stain it. And this brings some concerns traditionally. This one carved with Diospyros, ebony, dark, and now how to substitute with Floribunda, and then it's also light in color, and then we will have to stain it, and that is also a concern for these covers. You don't need to go through it. So, in spite of these challenges, there are several species we can use in place of these endangered ones. But the carvers are not ready to accept these because of these concerns. Most of the carvers complain of the obsolete tools. They are still using their traditional hand tools, and so introducing new species to them, they may have to prepare themselves and may not have the right tools to do the carving of these emerging species. And of course, like the challenge posed by my Kenyan brother, you have the technical data, but to get it out to them, these are indigenous people. They don't know about the properties of the species. They have indigenous knowledge of the indigenous species, and that's what they are used to. They train themselves, and then they also improvise their own tools to meet the properties of the indigenous species they used to. And they introduce new species to them, then it means they must know their properties and then adjust their tools too. So they lack technical information on the species because they are not indigenous. And then customers specify the species of the waste, especially those they export to some private people in the market overseas. They want particular species, and therefore the carver must have that species. And so it's a concern if you introduce this lesser known and then plantation grown species to them so that the forest can be managed sustainably. They also say if you use indigenous species, you sell your waste at higher prices than the plantation ones. And of course, if someone specifies the Diospyros and you're able to produce the Diospyros, of course you get money, but if you use any other species, the person thinks it might be inferior, you pay less for it. And then some species, for instance, cedrela has this property that if it dries, it's difficult, it blunts the tools easily. And there's been a lot of complaints from it. And of course, there's bureaucracy in acquiring these emerging species from the forest. Of course, if it's a plantation species, you can't easily cut it like going through the natural forest and sneaking your way to cut the log. So here, issue of legality and legalities coupled with the bureaucracy of acquiring the wood. If they are going away from the indigenous traditional species, and then introducing the plantation species, then they have to go through some procedure before they can get this wood for their carving. Yeah. Right. So despite the dwindling nature of the traditional carving species, efforts have been made to sustain the industry by planting more trees, both exotic and then the indigenous ones, of course, introducing the lesser known ones also in the forest. And it's been determined that these plantation grown species can replace the indigenous species because they are not inferior at all to these indigenous ones. They may have slightly different properties, however, they are not inferior. From the work of Dr. Mburu, you could see that the properties of some of the species, when we determine that they are not inferior. However, it's difficult for the local or indigenous people to accept it in use. Of course, so dissemination of the technical information on these species to the local carvers through workshops and training programs should be encouraged. So that is what we do. And I remember, especially through the preliminary contest we've been having through IWCS in Ghana, we met carvers and we talk to them and we introduce some of this to them. We have technical sessions with them and it's very fruitful. Some come back to confess that we never knew that it could work this way. And so the governments and then also foreign investors are encouraged to support carvers, indigenous carvers from these regions to improve their situation in sustaining the industry. Thank you very much.